Hey guys, we are excited to be here today to talk about our next podcast discussion, which is rope drop versus park close, and also Lightning Lane, which used to be called Genie Plus, but recently was changed to, and I'm just going to mess it up multiple times in this episode, it's been changed to Lightning Lane MultiPass. That's what it's called instead. So if you're seeing all this stuff about Genie Plus and everything's changing, don't panic. We're going to talk about it and give you the rundown on what you need to know to have a successful day in Disneyland. We want this episode to be sort of laying the groundwork for our future podcast episodes where we will delve into more detail on a lot of these things, but we're prioritizing this one because if there's one episode you need before you head to the parks, it's going to be this. This is going to help you prioritize things throughout your day, learn what you need to know so there's no surprises once you get to the park, and also help you feel like you have a little bit of a handle on Genie Plus once you get there.
I think we're going to just make this a little bit more broad, a little bit more, haven't been to the park before, or it's been a while. And just like, sometimes you just need a little bit of a step-by-step of like what to expect when you get there, because you kind of forget when it's been a hot minute, or if you've never been there, just the things that will make your day go a little bit smoother.
So we probably have talked about this before. If you followed us on other social media and seen other interviews and stuff with us, we have talked about this a lot, because our number one reason that we do this is because when we went on our first trip back in 2019 with our kids, we both came home from our respective vacations and we just were like, we could have done that so much better if we had just known these simple things. And it was little things like how big the park really is, what the lay of the land is between one ride and another, what to expect when you're going through security, and the fact that they're going to take apart everything that you've just packed for the day, like just little things. And so we just said to ourselves that this was something that was important for us to be able to pass on to people, because it really is the little things. It's not the major, like the things that you do as you go more often. Those aren't the things that you need on that first trip. And that's what this episode is about. It's not about diving into the really detailed stuff. It's about really giving you the confidence to go.
Yeah. We just really want people to feel like their first trip, if it's their one and only trip, was just as valuable and successful as their fifth trip that could have been. We want people to feel like they have all the tools to make it successful, because it's expensive and we understand that, and we want it to be good and right and to have it be just like the best trip.
So one thing I wanted to mention before we get really deep into this, because I want to talk about security and rope drop and all those things. Before I do, when I went on our first family trip, I booked the Camelot Inn, and it is across the street from Disneyland, like literally across the street. And Google Maps shows that it's across the street, and their website says that it's across the street, but anxiety-ridden first-timer me didn't really know what that meant. Like, did it actually mean it was across the street? Would there be some barrier that made it so that we couldn't walk and we'd have to like get on some shuttle or make some big... I mean, we'd been to Disney World, which felt like a whole different world. And the idea that you could just literally walk across the street seemed unlikely to me. So I called the hotel and I was like, are you really across the street? And they said, yes. They assured me, yes, it is. And I was still like, oh, it's a gamble. We'll see what happens when we get there. So we got there, and sure enough, it's right across the street. And so the first tip that we want to give you guys, especially if you're a first timer, is Harbor Boulevard. And by Harbor Boulevard, we mean anything from the Howard Johnson Anaheim down to the Anaheim Hotel, which is on the corner of Disney Way.
Like
that stretch.
A couple blocks worth of hotels. And there's a lot. There's probably 15 hotels between there. So it's not like you only have two choices. There's a lot of options between there. But you literally walk for 5 minutes and you're at the sign, and then you're like walking past the buses that are dropping people off, and then you're at security and you're in, and it's very easy to leave halfway through the day. You're not folding up your strollers. There's no secret tram or secret thing where you got to walk clear around. You literally cross a normal street crosswalk like you would have at home, and you're there. So, I made the mistake on my first trip, which part of it was due to like hotel availability, but we ended up at the Paradise Pier Hotel at the time, which is now Pixar Place. And we were like, oh, we're on property. We're going to be so close. It's going to be like no problem. And we leave our hotel, and it was actually raining that first morning, like cats and dogs pouring rain.
This is sounding
on our first
like
morning,
a great omen.
which was not great, but we were, ready to roll. And we walked for like 4 minutes or so, 4 or 5 minutes and we got to security. And I was like, that wasn't bad. That's no biggie. This is downtown Disney security. This is
on the Disneyland hotel side.
On the Disneyland hotel side.
Yeah.
This is, you have to walk through all of downtown Disney before you are actually at the gates. So it was more like a 15 to 20 minute walk, especially in the rain and with strollers and toddlers. It was like our shoes were soaked before we even made it to the gate. And we were a little bit like, what? Well, and so a little bit of a bait and switch, thinking that we were on property. But so this is the nice thing about Disneyland. On property doesn't always mean better. And those harbor hotels, they may have fewer amenities. They may not have all the Disney magic of being, having all the IP and all of that. But they really are, especially if you're like, we want to be in the parks. We want to be going all day. We want to be like, and you just need a nice place to sleep. All those harbor hotels are going to do that for you. And you're going to save a lot of money and have all your money for your food and your, I want to say merch, but souvenirs was what I was looking for. And feel like it was not as much of a break the bank situation. I think a lot of people, which is also why people feel like it's their once in a lifetime opportunity, is because they go on the Disneyland website and they price out their Disneyland hotel stay, and it's, $3,000 just in like sleeping accommodations, and then it's tickets, and then it's, and flights and parking and all the things, which the Disneyland hotel parking is way more expensive, and all those things where you're like, okay, well, this is really out of reach for what we can do. But you stay across the street of harbor and your hotel is $1,000 for your whole trip instead of $3,000 for your whole trip. And then you're starting to feel like it's more doable. So that's just, that's going a little, I went a little far.
We're passionate about the hotel situation. Well, I was going to say, back when you were talking about the Pixar Pier situation, I wanted to note that if you are choosing to stay at Pixar Pier now, there is an entrance that did not exist when she was there.
It's better now.
So you can now walk from Pixar Pier, especially if you're going into DCA, you can walk from Pixar Place Hotel directly into the DCA, like sort of down by the Little Mermaid. There's an entrance. So
we also did not know about the monorail. We did not know about the ability to like ride that in and out to save our feet. There's things. So
you know so much better now.
I know so. I would, if I was staying at Pixar Place now, I absolutely would recommend Pixar Place now.
For sure. Yeah.
4 years ago, I was like, it was fun, but pass.
Yes. But one other thing I wanted to say about the harbor hotels. So you've got I feel like there's a nice price differentiation. Like you can choose anything from the Courtyard, which has a water park area. It has bunk beds. It's a Marriott property, and it is a little bit more expensive per night, but it's still cheaper than on property.
Yes.
You're getting certain amenities. Everything from that to a literal motel like the Best Western, which offers free breakfast, by the way, or the Tropicana, which is going to run you more like maybe $250 a night-ish, give or take. Well, it gets higher sometimes, but the point is it's going to be a lot. You have a lot of variety in your budget, even along that. It runs the gamut, even along that section. And you're going to find something that fits your family's needs without breaking the bank.
For sure.
So anyway, that's our first tip. Harbor Boulevard. Look into it. And if you have questions, you can always message us. We have stayed at or toured literally every hotel along that section that we're talking about. So we can give you the pros and cons to that. And I don't know if Getaway Today offers 3rd, 4th, or 5th day free on any of those particular properties, but you should check, because Getaway Today also is a way to save you some money on hotel nights. And they do have a lot of really great hotel options, both along there and in the vicinity, that have benefits.
Yeah. And if they don't have extra night free, free parking or discounted parking or,
or a breakfast credit or, that kind of stuff. So definitely let us help you.
And in general, they just have discounted rates in general versus when you just call the hotel.
Right. And if you do see a better rate on the hotel website, you can call Getaway today and they will match it.
Yep.
So there's never not a reason to go through them.
Plus layaway, and you can just plan your trip a little bit better versus paying it all up front of the hotel. So anyway, there's lots of reasons why we love Getaway
That's the
today.
hotel.
But now, just like you wake up, it's Disneyland morning, you're heading into the park. Now what? Because that was always a question for me, like, how much do I need to be packing in? Can I pack things in? How far away is it? All these things. Can my kids walk back and forth from the hotel? All of these sorts of things are things to be thinking about. But if you stay on harbor, like we suggest, you walk across the street, you walk past a little bit of security, like people standing around just kind of watching. There's dogs that are there and everything, but you're not going super far. You're walking like the stretch
like
of
block.
A parking lot, like it's not super, super far. And then you get to the end and there's all these security lines. You want to plan to have all of your bags open, your zippers open, your stroller open, your stroller like shade open up. All of those things they'll want to check. If you've been back at the hotel and you packed this beautiful packing cube to go underneath your stroller and everything, plan that it's going to be opened up again. So just kind of think about as you're packing that this needs to not be inaccessible to them, because it will be all opened up. They got to open up, they got to feel around, they got to make sure everything's safe. Don't try to take anything like stools in. You can't take things like glass bottles or loose ice or anything like that. Make sure you've checked Disneyland as far as what you can actually take into the park. You don't want to have them be either confiscating stuff or they will tell you can keep it, but you have to take it back to the hotel. You can't bring in pocket knives. You can't bring in, just check your person before you head into the park.
Mace, things that you might have in your purse just generally in your everyday life, they will either confiscate or make you take back. Like a little pocket knife on your keys. It doesn't have to be something that you're I'm taking a pocket knife into Disneyland.
No,
it's
we've had it happen in a backpack before, where we've been oh, oops, because it was just in the backpack, not because we needed it in Disneyland.
Right. Another thing to note before you even get through the gates is your stroller size. They do have restrictions on that. You cannot take wagons in. There's no you can't have anything that you can pull behind you, because it's a trip hazard for other people that you're pulling a wagon that people can trip over.
If you do see wagons in the park, it's because they have received a special okay for it. Sometimes certain disabilities, they do allow those sorts of things. So if you do have feel like you need a wagon for your child for some specific reason, you can contact Disneyland and get a special ticket. But if you see one in Disneyland, you're well, they have a wagon, it's because they've been okayed, not because that's the general acceptance. You can do double strollers. You can have extra wide strollers. We definitely suggest strollers while we're talking about it for anyone that can be in a stroller. Anyone that's the size to sit in a stroller. Our kids, usually around 8-ish, tend to size out, and we have pretty big kids. But if you're got your 5-year-old and they're they haven't used a stroller in 3 years, they need the stroller. Yeah. Please plan to rent or bring a stroller, because the Disneyland strollers, they tend to run out. They're not very good, and you also have to leave the stroller on property. You can't take it off property. So you've got a kid sleeping at the end of the night. You drop off your stroller and you have to haul them back to your hotel,
which is a whole journey.
This is something we can talk about more, but just keep that in mind with your stroller situation.
For sure. And there really are lots of stroller options that are very reasonable. We've gotten to where sometimes, even though we have a stroller at home, I rent one anyway, just because it's more convenient, and I don't really want my stroller getting all hashed to death through the airline. It's I can't even explain how affordable it is. It's what? $60 for your week or
right around
whatever,
for a 5-day trip.
It's worth it to me to ruin
for a double,
to wear out someone else's stroller and not my own in Disneyland. Plus they're usually nice ones, joggers and city minis and stuff like that.
I've never had one that I've been ugh, I didn't like this. Yeah. I've been happy with it always.
So definitely look into that for sure. And we'll talk more about that we're going to do a whole episode focusing specifically on Disneyland with kids, all the specific things that you might want to know. So we'll talk more in depth about that, but just log it away.
Something's your thing about going through security. So you get into security, you walk into the Esplanade, and you literally can go to Disneyland or DCA. They're right next to each other. It's like, again, walking across a parking lot. It's not far. It's easy to hop back and forth. You don't have to get in and be like, then getting on transportation or anything. Like, you're literally there. Plan to have your tickets already downloaded on your phone. We're also going to do an episode about using the app and making sure you know how to do all of that. One thing that people don't really realize sometimes is they order magic bands off of the website, but they don't necessarily and so they've got them all ready to go, but you have to link them from your app to each magic band to their personal ticket. All of those sorts of things. When you go through the gate for the first time, they will take your picture. So if you accidentally put the wrong name on somebody's ticket or something, it's not a big deal. But once you've scanned in and they take the photo of the person attached to that ticket, that needs to be that person's ticket from then on. Because every time you scan in, their photo will pop up and you need to make sure you've got the right ticket associated with the right person.
Right.
So, but that's really about all you need to know about getting into the park.
One thing to mention before you move forward in the ticket realm is that anyone that has a phone in your group, it's a good idea to have them all link their tickets together. So your husband, your wife, your partner, your teenage child, whatever. And that goes for both Genie Plus use. It goes for getting virtual queues. It goes for just being able to get in and out of the park easily with whoever happens to pull it up. Sometimes one person's phone isn't loading very quickly. The app's not working. So it's just really nice to have backups. And we always just link tickets before we even head into the park and make sure that everyone that has a device has the app downloaded and has everyone's tickets in their party all linked together.
Well, and you can have different accounts. You don't all have to be logged into the same account. You just, in your individual account, you go and you add everybody's ticket in so that you have access to it, they have access to it.
Yeah.
It just makes your trip
it's
so much
pretty
easier.
Self-explanatory once you're in there too. It'll show you where to.
There's cast members everywhere that are happy to help you link your magic band if you don't know how, get your tickets added, all those sorts of things. Just make sure to don't go into your day being like, I just have no control over my tickets and stuff like that. Because you want to be able to make sure everybody has what they need. You want people to be able to enter and exit the park as they need. If you're there with grandparents, sometimes we've done this where we make sure they have their own tickets in hand or their magic band to where they could leave the park and come back separate from us and all of those sorts of things. So just make sure you know how all of that works.
And one more little thing just in general about the Disney community is, especially at Disneyland, there's so many locals and so many pass holders and stuff, and almost all of them are friendly. So, I mean, we have fully stood at Rope Drop with families and helped them schedule their first ride of the day, got their Genie Plus paid for, done all the things to help them feel confident that they knew what to do. And so if you have a question and you're standing at Rope Drop or you're standing in the line to get in or whatever and something's confusing, look around for someone that looks like they know what they're doing and just ask. People are happy to help. We're always happy to help. And I feel like most people would say, oh yeah, you just go link this or you just do this or whatever. So just reach out, take advantage of the crowdsourcing around you and don't think that you're an island because you're not. So
one thing, as we've gone through all of this, it's taken us probably almost as long to talk about it as it would take you to actually do it in the park.
Yeah.
You walk from your hotel, you get to security, you go through security, you enter with your tickets. If you're staying on Harbor, what would you say from leaving your hotel room to entering the park?
We timed it a lot. I feel like on a normal day, before security kind of changed and got a little bit trickier, I would say we could easily time it and be in within 15 minutes from any of the ones along the general harbor section.
So, a general rule has always been if we want to be there for Rope Drop, we leave our hotel by 7:30. Mm-hmm. And we will be there with enough.
And if we want to give ourselves a little buffer, 7:20.
Yeah. So, so just so you're planning your timing, don't feel like some people are like, you should be at the park an hour early. Please don't. You're just going to be standing at a gate. If you want to be the first people at the front of the gate first thing in the morning, by all means.
Well, and there's reasons, because they usually do open the park itself between 7, I feel like no later than 7:30. They usually, are you saying no?
Saying,
I thought you were like, no, they don't. I was like, yeah, they do. No. So usually you can be in the gates by no later than about 7:30.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you want to like get some photos with crowds that are lower while your kids still look cute, or you want to, you know, I mean, sometimes characters start to kind of, you know, come out against, you know, toward the train station. If you want to be toward the front of the ropes, there's reasons to be there by about 7:30, but there's no reason to be there at 7 for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And there really is going to be limitations on what you can do. You can't really buy food yet. You can't like shop. So it's really photos, getting your stuff set up.
Now I think about it, they are letting people in before 7:30 now that they have early entry on early entry days, because they want you to be able to get into the park at 7:30. Like true. Be going to a ride at 7:30. You're right.
Well, but that changes day to day,
depending
one park
on
to the other. Day. So, but as a general rule, I feel like they're both parks really are open by 7:30 easy. And so just if you're an anxious person that wants to know you're in the park, that's fine. Just, it's not going to take you an hour to get from, you know, your hotel to where you need to be. It's going to take you 20 minutes, like just is. Once you're in the park and you've taken your pictures and you've done all the things we just talked about, you can either get in line at Starbucks and wait for an hour for your morning coffee, which is a choice that you can make.
Valid.
Or you can go get in line for rope drop. So in Disneyland, you've got basically 3 to 4-ish directions you can really go. The hub, if you've been in Disneyland, excuse me, it's a circle. And each of the lands kind of comes off like a little web, like a spider web off of each thing. So you've got Adventureland, Frontierland, Fantasyland, Tomorrowland. Those are the areas.
And also there's a little bit of there's a Fantasyland through the castle, and then there's a Fantasyland but past the Matterhorn.
That takes you more toward Toontown.
That takes you more toward So if you're wanting to do like Matterhorn or Toontown or Small World, I would bank right. But if you're heading straight to Peter Pan,
go through the
middle, under the castle.
Yeah. So if you're going to, I mean, the major attractions that you would be wanting to rope drop would be Indiana Jones, which is a little bit of a gamble because sometimes it's not open when the park opens, but at least it's toward the front. So if it isn't open, you have a lot of ability to like pivot. Mm-hmm. So Indiana Jones, Haunted Mansion Holiday in particular is one people like to rope drop. That's where you're going to head through Adventureland. Then you've got Frontierland, and that's Big Thunder, which most people don't rope drop, but that's where you'd go for Big Thunder. Or if you're going back to Rise of the Resistance, which is a whole journey because it is a major gamble. Mm-hmm. Because on the one hand, it may be a great way to get a low wait time. On the other hand, if you get there and it's not open yet, which happens probably, 50% of the time, I feel like you are now at the very back of the park. And by the time you turn around and trek back out and decide to go to Fantasyland or whatever, all those lines are now, 20 minutes later than what they would have been.
Even as it sits, because Rise is such a long ride, even if you get a 15 or 20 minute wait, you're there for 20 plus minutes in the ride itself.
You're out at 9.
It's like almost 9 o'clock. Yeah. You tend to spend your whole first hour on Rise, which, if that's important, it's not the end of the world, but it may not be necessarily the way you want to spend your morning when you, say, have a bunch of little kids that could be spending time in Fantasyland for an hour.
Hitting all of it.
7 different rides over the course of your morning.
Right. So it's a choice. And if you have multiple park days, you're figuring on a 5-day trip, try it one day. Sure. It's not a bad choice. It's just not one we usually bank on because it is a time suck and it's a gamble. So Rise of the Resistance. The other choice is going under the castle, like Britton said, and that will lead you to Peter Pan, which is the major one people try to rope drop. But honestly, and we did a post recently on Instagram, you can go look at about this, we don't recommend this one. And this is because if you're not the first person on Peter Pan, basically, if you're even in that rope drop queue, you're still waiting 30-ish minutes before you end up on that ride. And it's a 2-minute ride. And in the meantime, all the other queues are filling up. So I feel like when we like to rope drop Fantasyland, we usually start with all the other ones. Like we do Snow White and we do Dumbo and Casey Jr. and the Teacups and Alice in Wonderland and Mr. Toads. And we hit all of the other ones. And then we decide, do we want to go stand in the now 40-minute Peter Pan line or not? And usually we don't. But if it's... I love Peter Pan.
Me too.
I hate the wait.
The load time is just so slow. So this is why it's such a problem, is even if you are the first 100 people in Peter Pan, you have a 30-minute wait. Yeah. And so it just like 30 minutes early in the morning when you could do other things, or 30 minutes at a different time when all the other
because
things
it
are 30
stays that
minutes
way
too.
all day.
Yeah, it doesn't get really a lot worse than a 45-minute wait.
Mm-mm.
I still wouldn't pick a 45-minute Peter Pan wait, but everybody's got their thing.
Everyone has their thing. I it's a hard one. And I feel like if it's your only trip ever, you should make a point to go for sure.
I love Peter Pan.
But it is a challenge for me because you get off and you're like, and even my kids, they'll be like, that was it? Because it's so short. It's so short. And the queues...
Which is sad because it's actually very fun as far as a dark ride because you're in the boat and you're hanging versus
kind of like glide.
Like a normal cart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So.
But the queue is particularly tight. It's like you're basically just hugging the people in the row next to you.
Mm-hmm. And as is all four of the, well, I would say maybe all the Fantasyland rides. They were, I mean, it's a original to the park back in the 60s when everybody was really skinny. And I don't know what it is, but if you are somebody that doesn't enjoy crowds, or feels like you don't want to be squished into a really narrow queue, maybe don't Fantasyland rides.
Well, and if you're going to Fantasyland rides, do it during rope drop, because at least then you're more likely to,
you're not snuggling
to weave through and not snuggle up against people in the hot sun.
Yeah.
But anyway, that was a long caveat. But the point is, strategize Fantasyland in a way that gets the most rides out of your day, because that's the people that are rope dropping Fantasyland have small children, and small children want to move quickly. They want to feel like they're doing a lot, and
especially when they're really excited first thing in the morning. They just want to do stuff.
They would rather hit 6 less good rides than wait for Peter Pan. At least I feel like that's the case.
That's our experience. Anyway, you also, because you're kind of right there, we tend to hit stuff like Teacups and Alice, and Matterhorn is not always open first thing either, which is kind of a bummer because it can have a really long wait time and it's a good time to do it. But it will open usually within the first half hour of park opening. So if you've kind of done, Alice and Teacups and Storybook Canal, and you just kind of like eyeball it, you can hop on a 10-minute Matterhorn pretty quick. And so that's kind of a good, and then you feel like you've got a big ride out of the way, plus some of the smaller Fantasyland stuff.
So then, continuing on your rope drop journey, your other choices are Toontown, which sometimes Runaway Railway, which is kind of the headlining ride in Toontown, isn't open as well. Some of those ones, they just kind of, I don't know why it is. I don't know if it's just that if they don't start, they've got to like kick them in the back or something.
Well, I do know that they have to do certain things, like the cast members have to walk the track every morning. And like there's like same with like Indiana Jones. Like there's things that if starting things up was a little slow, or moving through and doing all the security, the safety checks and stuff like that, maybe took a little bit longer. Sometimes they just aren't okayed to be open yet.
Yeah.
So, but you still can go to Toontown. There's still Roger Rabbit, and there's the Gadget Go Coaster. And usually by the time you do those, Runaway will be open. Or if you play around a little bit, and the characters come out pretty quick there and everything. So it's not a terrible one to go spend some time in.
Right. It's my kids' favorite place to rope drop.
Actually. Is it?
Yes. Since the new Toontown, they beg to have rope drop be in Toontown. And they don't even really care if they get on the rides. It's all about that playground and the potential characters.
And it's empty in the morning.
Yes. They love that they have basically full reign of the play area. And also they like looping Gadget's Go Coaster, which I don't love riding because it's hard to get in and out of, and it's again kind of a short one. I'm very much like a cost analysis person when it comes to rides at this point. I'm like, too much work.
I mean, who isn't?
And the queue is long. You have to like weave through this giant queue even if there's no line. So anyway, my kids like to loop that, and we just kind of sit there and watch because we don't have to go on it with them at this point. But the character, Mickey and Minnie, like you said, their houses, they sometimes start meet and greets outside their houses at that point.
And if it's not them, they bring out Daisy or Clarabelle or,
Goofy's out there a lot in the morning.
Goofy's out there in the morning. So,
great way to
it's a good way to just like really, kind of like Fantasyland, immerse yourself in what Disney is kind of early on. And it's all little people. Usually the older teenagers and stuff have all ran to like the bigger headliners. So it really is like, you're not worried about getting trampled and feeling like all the crowds pressing in. You get to you can take really cute photos.
Vibe.
You can pull the sword from the stone.
You can hear the music.
You can have, like all the things that is enjoyable about just like magical classic Disneyland is Fantasyland and Toontown.
Yeah. So that's those two. And then the only other section you can really go to is Tomorrowland. And that would be basically Space Mountain is what people run to on that one.
Yep. And it's one of those two, if you're not toward the front, you're going to get a solid like 20-25 minute wait, which we've done before and felt a little bit like, and again, you're not getting off till like 8:45 or something. You've kind of wasted a good chunk of your morning, which isn't the end of the world. I mean, it's still a way better wait time than the rest of the day when it's going to be a 60-minute wait. But just all things to like kind of consider. So that is Disneyland rope drop. Should we talk about DCA rope drop?
It's a
whole different journey.
Yeah.
All right. DCA is really fun to rope drop. Mostly because of Guardians of the Galaxy. We are a little bit biased. No, DCA, I don't know what it is about it. It tends to be a slower roll first thing in the morning. Like, it doesn't feel as crowded quite as fast. I don't know. People are just like, I don't know, more chill going into DCA in the morning.
No.
But I feel like there's just, maybe DCA is bigger in some ways. Like, the rides that you spread out a lot quicker.
It does have a bigger footprint.
So I think there's something about it. It feels empty longer. So your biggest rides that you're going to be doing, there's really like 2 or 3 different options that you're going to take when you go to DCA for rope drop. The first one, which I would always encourage everyone, well, no, I don't want anyone to go there because I want to go there, is to Guardians of the Galaxy. So you don't enter through Avengers Campus, you enter through Hollywood Boulevard. There's a rope kind of right around Animation Academy where they block it all off, and that's where you stand and wait for Guardians of the Galaxy. You can go to Web Slingers, but we would not suggest it because you get stuck behind the Guardians crowd and have to go up and around and then to the back of Web Slingers to get it. Like, you got to enter Web Slingers from the Cars Land side. So anyway, Guardians of the Galaxy is really the only thing you're going to do from Hollywood Boulevard. Your other option is to go straight down Buena Vista. The rope's kind of right around Grizzly Peak, and you're going to head toward either into Avengers Campus or into Cars Land. Avengers Campus will take you to Web Slingers. Cars Land, most of those people are heading to Radiator Springs Racers. Do we suggest Radiator Springs Racers first thing in the morning?
It's kind of the same sort of thing as Rise of the Resistance, where it's a choice. And maybe if you have a lot of days, it's not a horrible way to take a gamble, but we never do it. And it's because, everyone does it. So it's, again, one of those things where unless you're at the front of the ropes, you're still waiting in a line. You
still have a 40-minute wait.
And the other thing is, about half the time, it's not open. So ever you get, and they don't tell you.
Usually don't know until you're at the back of Cars Land.
Right.
And then you've kind of lost your opportunity to bank to Web Slingers or head to the pier. Like, you're kind of just, you're like, I guess we'll go. Then Luigi's has a 40-minute wait first thing in the morning because everybody has to go there.
So I don't choose it usually. I feel like there's just as good of strategies for riding cars. One of which is, if you have all your kids 7 and older, is single rider. Half the time you end up in a car with at least one other person in your party anyway. So I feel like we tend to go that route the most often. And also, if it hasn't opened up first thing in the morning, which again, about half the time it feels like it hasn't, you can just keep an eye on it on the app. And once it pops up, you can walk over there and expect really not worse than a half an hour wait in the cooler hours of the day.
First, kind of early-ish in the morning.
Yeah. And then, I mean, all of a sudden it will jump up and be 2 hours or whatever.
If you wait till about 10 or 10:30, then you're going to be in the long wait. But usually in that first hour and a half, if you don't do that initial jump with everybody, you can go back after 15 or 20 minutes.
And it's not any worse.
It's not any worse. Yeah. And you've already done a couple other things.
Yeah. So that's, I don't know. And I love that ride. It's one of the best rides in DCA.
There's a reason it has a long wait all the time.
Yeah. But it's just, the queue can be really hot and long. There's a lot.
We really like it first thing earlier in the morning, single rider, or like evening.
Mm-hmm.
So
like while people are watching World of Color, the first World of Color,
like 9 o'clock at night,
it can be not too bad. Yeah.
So your third option would be to head toward Pixar Pier. So most of the people there, you can break off and go that way from the Cars rope, but some people also line up above by Little Mermaid. And so that one's going to be a little bit quicker for you. So head up around Grizzly Peak and stand at the ropes at Little Mermaid.
You're going to go like past Soarin', like clear up around toward like the Grand Californian and the whole go around Grizzly River Run, just so that's clear.
So you'll head down. This is where we would suggest you do Midway Mania and the Incredicoaster. Those are kind of the ones that get the longest waits. Midway more than Incredicoaster. Incredicoaster will stay low longer. But then you can also hit up all of those pier rides with like 5-minute or less waits all morning.
Yeah.
Like if the pier is important at any point in your day, you should plan to rope drop it one day, because it's nice and cool down there first thing in the morning. It gets really hot and the wait times are just nothing. My kids will do silly symphony swings. And there's so many seats on that they will just like let them stay on. They don't even make you get off. They're just like, yeah, you can circle it again. They just like circle it. So that one, Goofy Sky School's down there. Sometimes it's not open first thing, but you can often get on it.
Well, I like that there's a lot of options down there for different heights. So like you can, Midway Mania has no height restriction. Your older kids are on Incredicoaster, your little kids can go on Jesse's Critter Carousel. Like I feel like it's a little bit more family friendly for everyone. There's something for everyone to be doing. There's also the Ferris wheel, the pal around. It's one thing to keep in mind with it is that it's just kind of a slower run in general. It will eat up a good chunk of your morning, but you can really do absolutely everything on the pier in the first hour and a half. Hour and a half, if you want. If everything is open, if everything's running like it's supposed to, without delays, I think so. That's fair.
It's a big chunk of the park to get out of the way comfortably,
and then you don't even have to go back to it.
No,
unless you have Genie Plus and you want to go back down.
Yeah, but then you would go back and do Incredicoaster, Midway. Maybe go back and get some lunch at Boardwalk. Yeah. Sounds like a lovely day.
I know. I was just thinking about that. Like, this is sounding better and better. So that's really the rope drop choice. You could go to Soarin'.
Soarin' also keeps a low time. You don't have to go there very first thing. It keeps a low time for the first hour and a half of the day.
I think
so. That you could do. We often do stuff like we do Guardians and Web Slingers and have some breakfast. And then we go to Soarin'.
Yeah.
You know?
And in the meantime, we booked a Lightning Lane
for Midway.
Or 10
and we're going to go
or whatever. Yeah. So that's kind of how we roll. So DCA is just really different. Your strategy is different because it's less about quantity at DCA generally and more about the quality of those, hitting those more headliner rides like Web Slingers and Guardians.
That can have ridiculous waits later for no reason.
Yeah. I mean, for good reason.
For good reason. But I mean, Guardians. But especially I think about the pier and like Silly Symphony or something having a 40-minute wait, and you're like,
it's a no for me.
Pass.
So that's that.
So that's DCA.
So that would be your basic rope drop strategy. So if you're saying how do I prioritize this? Go back, listen to this again, and write down what we just said in order. Like do this, then this, then this. We also have some on our website. We have a section where we talk about rope drop, and we kind of give a lot of this advice in more of a list that you could copy and paste into your notes. So now that you've rope dropped, the next question is, how do you start incorporating Genie Plus into your day?
Not Genie Plus.
Not Genie Plus. Lightning Lane MultiPass into your day.
I was trying to think of a shorter name for it.
LLMP.
And it was like,
if you're going on LLMP.
It didn't work.
Fail. So because things aren't complicated enough at Disneyland, we had to change a 2-word thing to a 4-word thing that does the exact same thing. And at Disneyland, it literally does the exact same thing it always has. At Disney World, they've made some changes to like when you can book things, booking things before you visit, all that kind of stuff. This is not that. So throw those things away. If you've read those things and you're going to Disneyland, Disney World does not apply.
Nothing changed. If you've already bought tickets that have Genie Plus included on them, don't panic.
Yeah.
It's just now Lightning Lane MultiPass. It's the same. It's the same thing. Don't panic. You still have it's still the same price. It's still the same value. You're still going to do the same things. Nothing's changed. But let's tell you what those things are.
Right. So Genie Plus, Lightning Lane MultiPass. My gosh, this is going to be really hard.
It is.
A Lightning Lane MultiPass gives you access to certain rides in the park, most of the major attractions in both DCA and Disneyland, for a set price every day per person. It's usually between $30 and $35 a person now per day, which is a lot. It used to be $20 to $25, so we'll talk about that. Anyway,
you're not bitter.
Not bitter and annoyed. Well, because when you have 6 people in your family, that goes from like $150 a day to $200. I mean, it makes a big difference all of a sudden in
it's huge.
Your money per day. Which, before we delve in, let's just give you this one tip, and that is to tell you that you don't need Genie Plus every day. You do not need to add it to your ticket. If you haven't yet, don't, because really, there's ways to save yourself that extra $180 or whatever.
Unless you're only going for like 2 days. Well, you want it.
Yeah.
If you're going for 3, 4, 5 days, you don't need it every single day.
Right. Because you're just going to strategize a little differently. What you're going to do is prioritize rides during the days you have Genie Plus, have them be more ride heavy days. And then somewhere in between there, once or twice, you're going to choose to not. And on those days, you're maybe going to swim at your hotel in the middle of the day. Maybe you're going to have a character dining reservation at some point. Maybe you're doing Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique. That's going to take a chunk of your day. Maybe you're going to prioritize shows or waiting for fireworks or waiting for a parade or all of those other things. Yeah. So that's a way to just save you some money. Just save the Tiki Room and, Fantasyland and all the things that don't count on Genie Plus and prioritize those into 1 or 2 of your days. And then on the opposite days, you're going to really heavily utilize your Genie Plus.
Because you can still have a really amazing day at Disneyland without all the headliners in the Genie Plus. There's plenty to do. You're not going to be like, oh, well, that means we don't then only get to ride 3 rides and wait an hour for each of them.
Right.
No, you don't. You just do different things. You make different choices.
Well, and you can still rope drop and close the park out. And both of those things will give you access to a lot. I mean, we don't start scheduling our Lightning Lanes until a couple hours into the day anyway. So if you've done rope drop right, you've already hit Guardians and Web Slingers and Midway Mania, and you don't even need those 3 at all. And so really
the thing to keep in mind is you only get to use it once on each ride. So if you're like, I want to ride Guardians of the Galaxy more than once and not wait in it, you rope drop it. You don't use your Lightning Lane first thing in the morning. You don't schedule an 8 a.m. Guardians of the Galaxy. You rope drop. You walk in with everybody else in the standby queue. And then you schedule a Guardians of the Galaxy for 2 p.m.
Right.
And go back.
Well, and this goes for any ride ever on Genie Pluses. If you show up to that Genie Plus, it's not Genie Plus, but you know what I'm talking about. If you show up to your Lightning Lane MultiPass selection and there is a 10-minute wait for the ride you're about to get on, cancel it. Actually, don't cancel it. Don't cancel it. Modify it. Because if you modify it, it's not going to start your window back open, which we'll go into more detail on. But
it's so confusing, guys.
It's confusing, but
we'll have a whole episode about all the nitty-gritty of it. But
stay tuned. But it's really not complicated once you figure it out. It sounds really convoluted and hard to process, but once you see it in practice, it's really not as bad as it seems. But if you cancel a Lightning Lane, it's going to start your 2-hour window, your 2-hour penalty over. If you modify it, your time stays the same. Or your next booking time stays the same. So anyway, don't walk up to Soarin' with a 10-minute wait and waste your Soarin' pass unless that's the only time you're going to get a chance to ride it anyway that day. Save it, because that is useless. So anyway, we'll get into more detail about that. It really don't panic. I'm worried that we're panicking.
I think you're panicking people a little. This is supposed to be basic Lightning Lane.
Keep it simple.
Keep it simple, stupid.
Okay, that's what the acronym should have been for it, not LLMP.
Kiss would have been better.
Okay, so other things to note. If you have hoppers, or if you don't have hoppers, the value of your Genie Plus automatically is half of what it was because you don't have access to the other half. It doesn't cost you less to get a Lightning Lane MultiPass ticket or for half the park. You still pay $35
And actually, in general, if you only have a DCA reservation all day,
you'll hit
your
everything.
value is like even less.
Yeah.
Disneyland, there's more choices. Okay. Park hopper choices. Disneyland choices. DCA choices. And if you can't see me right now, you're just listening to me. I'm saying if you do have a hopper, you get to have 15 choices of rides throughout the day. If you're just in Disneyland, you have maybe nine,
choices,
and then in DCA you have 6. Yeah. I mean, that's not the right numbers. Math.
It was probably close, honestly. So consider that. Say to yourself, if Genie Plus is Lightning Lane MultiPass is something that you want.
Why did they have to change it?
Why is it such a bad name?
Because they didn't want to go back to Fast Pass or Max Pass.
You mean they've used up all the good stuff?
They've used up all the good stuff, so now they're just like, let's be super clear. So this is the point in which if Genie Plus Lightning Lane MultiPass...
See, it's harder than you think.
...is something that you want a little bit better of a lay of the land on, pull out your notebook. Because we want to tell you the rides that go quickly, or the first ones, because they kind of, what happens is you schedule them they get scheduled throughout the day. Say they have 100 time slots for 9 o'clock and 9:30 and 10 o'clock and 10:30, that as soon as those start booking up, it gets later and later throughout the day to where then they just don't exist anymore. Once they've all been booked up, they book up. And some of them book up quicker. People select them sooner in the day, or they have a lower capacity. They can only do 50 every half hour instead of 100 or whatever the numbers are. So there's certain rides that go quickly. So for Disneyland, that would be Indiana Jones, Space Mountain,
Haunted Mansion Holiday. But right now it's not even on it because of the construction. So that doesn't count. But in a normal year.
And Runaway Railway.
Mm-hmm.
Those are probably the 4 that I would say.
But not as
Matterhorn
fast.
doesn't go quite as fast. It can get to where it's about 2 or 3 hours away. Mm-hmm. But these ones are ones that like it's 11 in the morning and you can't go till 7 o'clock at night. You know, like they start to get really far out. So those are your priorities in Disneyland. In DCA, your priorities are Guardians, Midway Mania,
Web Slingers. Really, those 3.
Those 3. Everything else, you can usually plan that there's, a little bit more wiggle room. You can get closer to immediate return times or only have to wait for 45 minutes or whatever. But those are your priorities of ones that you could, if you do not get them earlier in the day, you may not get to use them at all.
Right. And you can still, sometimes they'll reappear. Like people will drop them and rearrange things or whatever. And in that case, sometimes you think Indy's gone and all of a sudden 10 p.m. one pops back up or something. That does happen, but it's not it's not something you can guarantee. So it's just better to make sure you got them out of the way if they're important to you. And you can prioritize that based on a lot of things, just what your family's own interest is, what people's height requirements might be, that kind of stuff. Not everyone has the same priorities as other people.
But again, this is why we also don't start booking first thing in the morning, because if you book your Guardians Lightning Lane and it's really only got a 15-minute wait, you're kind of wasting it. Go do the 15-minute wait and ride it, and then book it later when it has a 90-minute wait.
Right.
So that's why you want to book it when it makes sense.
Okay, so the other strategy that you need to keep in mind, along with which order to book things in, is the way that Lightning Lane MultiPass works, which is you can book a new ride every 2 hours or as soon as you scan into the current ride you have on the schedule. So if I book something,
comes first.
Yeah, whichever comes first. So if I book a Midway Mania for 9 a.m. at 8 a.m., technically I can't book another ride until 10 a.m. But as soon as I scan in at 9 a.m., I'm free again. So you want to choose things that have the closest return time as possible when possible, because you lose that 2-hour penalty gets smaller. It doesn't exist if you cleared your bank, so to speak. So there's certain things where you have to take the penalty. Like if Indiana Jones is already out till 4 p.m. at 10 a.m. when you go to book it and you really, really want it, you have to decide if it's worth waiting till noon to book your next one and take that penalty. You can also learn how to toggle, which is kind of something we can go into more detail on. You can book the 4 p.m. to sort of get your clock rolling and then kind of keep checking and see if an earlier time has popped up and modify it to a 2 p.m. or a 12 p.m. or whatever might randomly pop up as people rearrange their day. But that's something we can go into more detail. Don't feel bogged down by that at this moment. The big thing you need to keep in mind is you can book another one as soon as you either hit your 2-hour window or scan in. And you want to scan in if possible, because that's going to be less than your 2-hour window. That's the only
That's why
benefit.
Also, the sooner you can scan in, the better. If you do have a window of from 9 to 10, try to go as close to 9 as possible. Don't wait clear till 10.
Right.
Or you're because as soon as you can clear that, you can start the clock on another ride.
So the minute you scan in, you get on your phone and you book your next one. Like while you're in the queue, you pop on and immediately book your next one. Don't leave a delay in time. And if you do have to wait for the 2-hour penalty, set an alarm on your phone so that you can know it's time to go book another one. And the biggest time that I do the alarm setting is when we take breaks in the afternoon. So maybe we have gone through and scheduled, like we've hit, a 9 a.m. and a 10 a.m. and a 10:30 and an 11. And we've kind of knocked out a few in the morning and we're going to go take a break. So this is a great time to choose things that are disappearing quickly. Like if Indiana Jones is already gone at 9, or if Indiana Jones is already out till 4 at 9 a.m., maybe still don't get it quite yet. Use the ones that are closer, get a few out of the way, and then when you're ready to take a break in the afternoon or go to your dining reservation at noon or whatever, where you're already maybe going to have a little bit of a window, that's the time to take the penalty and grab the now 8 p.m. Indiana Jones or whatever, because then you're just going to set your 2-hour alarm. And while you're taking your break or you're at the swimming pool or you're taking a nap or you're, eating your dining reservation, the minute that hits, you can book another one. You can hold more than one. You can hold several at a time if you want, but you can only hold them every 2 hours. So, but sometimes when we take a break at 1, we come back at 5 and I've now stacked a 1 p.m., a 3 p.m. and a 5 p.m. and we've got 3 rides ready to roll the minute we hit the ground.
You booked them at 1
I booked
p.m.,
one at 1.
One at 3, and one at 5.
For 6,
for later.
6:30 and 7, right? Or 6, 7, and 7:45 or whatever for later that night. So that's the benefit of stacking. You don't want to stack while you're still actively using things in the park, because that's just wasting your 2-hour time.
And we also keep seeing weird things online where people talk about stacking your afternoon at 8 in the morning. You still, like I said, you have to wait for people to take those time slots for it to get later in the day. So you need 100 people to take the 9 o'clock slot and 100 people to take the 9:30 and 100 people to take the 10. You can't just at 8 o'clock book a 4 o'clock because it sounds fun. It has to have moved out to, enough people have to have reserved it to where it's pushed out to 4 o'clock.
Exactly.
You're not just like going in at 8 in the morning being like, well, I want to go on Indiana Jones at 4 p.m. That's not
where it's at.
That's not how it works. It's at 9:30. But you don't necessarily want to go at 9:30 because you could go do a 20-minute wait on it right now. You know?
And there's reasons people want to, like, let's say you really want to ride a certain ride at a certain time of day for a reason. Like, you want to ride Grizzly River Run when it's at the hottest part of the day or whatever. That's a reason to kind of just keep an eye on it. Like if you go in at 9 a.m. and it's at 9:30, it's not the time to book it. Book something else. And when you start to see the time creep up and it's at 1 p.m. and you're like, oh, okay, that's when we need it, then you pull the trigger. You just kind of keep strategizing and prioritizing based on where you are in the park, what your plans are for the day, what the weather's like. All the factors make a difference in how you decide to stack those things or choose to wait and not pull the trigger.
So that might be a little bit like beefy for some. Like we weren't trying to be complicated, but it is a little bit of a basic understanding of what you need to know with Genie Plus. And if you want to know all of our strategies and all of our like nitty gritty stuff, we will work on an episode very, very soon about
It's like a deep dive.
all the deep dive, how to get the most out of it. We did, I don't know if anybody sees this, and if you want to go back and look, you can look on our YouTube. We have a video. We rode every ride in both parks that were open in one day back in November of 2022, 23, 2022.
2022.
And by using Genie Plus, single rider, rope drop, park close. It was a 16-hour day, but we rode every single ride in both parks that was open on that day in November. So it is possible to use all of your Genie Plus tools.
Yeah.
And to use your single rider, and if you're gung ho and you've got a bunch of teenagers that are willing to do a 16-hour day and go hard, you can absolutely make the most of your day and do a ton of rides. You just need the tools to make that happen. And we want to deep dive that with you. But if you're just like, we just want to go have a relaxing, fun family vacation, this will help you make it easier, make it so you don't have hour-long waits on stuff that you should have a 10-minute wait on, or, you know, how to keep your kids happy and stuff like that. That's more what this is. We can make it more intense.
Well, and we talk about this a lot
down the road.
That's like, this is one of those things where if you haven't been to the parks, you just don't know. And once you've gone a few times, there's certain things that, like, we can look at a line at this point for probably basically anything. And if it says 45 minutes, we can be like, that's not 45 minutes. We can say that's actually 20, or that's actually an hour, because we've had enough experience with how things flow, what the loading process is, what the likelihood of breakdowns are, that we can intrinsically kind of like instinctively do that at this point. Obviously, a first timer doesn't know that. If it says 45 minutes, you believe it's 45 minutes. And that's the only thing you have to trust, unless you've kind of done a little bit of research. We will, like Britton said, we will deep dive this. And so if you want that deep dive, stay tuned. But hopefully this gave you a little bit of a basic confidence to be like, okay, I have the basic tools to feel like I can book a trip and maybe make this work. Or I have my trip booked and now I'm not like hyperventilating.
Or if you have questions, put them in the comments. Send us messages, whatever. We're happy to help at any point.
We will definitely respond. We're eager to help, and we want you. It's like we said, like the whole purpose of this is we want you to have a successful trip. And we know how much it can go wrong and how easily it can. We have people that'll message and be like, I don't know what you were talking about. I got on 3 Genie Plus rides all day long. And we're like, well, you did it wrong. Like, you just did. There's no way you got on only 3 rides if you knew what you were doing. And so don't be that person.
Once you get there and book a couple, it makes a lot more sense. You'll all of a sudden be like, oh, now I know what they were talking about. That's how you modify. A lot of sense. So
don't panic.
Don't panic. It's doable.
Yeah.
But we should also talk about park close as an option.
Okay.
So park close is another good strategy for getting on a bunch of rides with low wait times and low heat and all of those sorts of things that come in the middle of the day. So if you've Genie Plus, you've stacked your lanes for the night, you've got all of that. You also have shows happening. There's fireworks, there's Fantasmic, there's World of Color, there's sometimes a nighttime parade, depending on when you're going. Plan all that in, and also plan that crowds happen at this time of night. Like, if you're going in for park close, go in and get some dinner and find yourself toward the back of the park somewhere and stay there during shows if you can. This is a great time to ride Rise the Resistance, is during fireworks or Fantasmic. It almost always has a really low 30-45 minute wait, which is a great time. Remember that Fantasyland and Toontown close for a couple of hours in the evening during fireworks for safety, but then by about 10 o'clock, they both open back up, and this is actually a super great time to do these too. So if you didn't Fantasyland rope drop in the morning or Toontown, do it at night. It's super cute at night. It's all twinkly lights and lit up both areas of the park, and you can hit a bunch of stuff one right after the other. I mean, Big Thunder Mountain's amazing in the dark. I swear they speed it up at night. Do you think they do?
No, they don't, but it feels that way.
It's so much faster.
I almost am to the point where I don't even like it in the daytime because I love it at night so much. Like, I'm like, what a waste.
It's so much better. So just all things to keep in mind with park close. You can stay, DCA's open till 10 usually, and Disneyland's open till midnight. So this is another benefit of Park Hopper, is you can be in DCA till 10, you can watch World of Color, or just close down some rides in DCA. And then if you're still ready for more fun, you go over to Disneyland, and you've got a couple more hours of really like walk on.
Almost
stuff.
walk on everything, yeah, or at least like really low weights. So.
And until midnight, you can hop on a ride up until park close. So you can go get in line for something at 9:59 in DCA and 11:59 in Disneyland, and they will let you ride that ride. So if you're like, I want to get every last second of my Disney fun out of this, go get in line for Space Mountain at 11:58, and you'll wait through the whole queue and ride it, and you don't leave till 12:30 or whatever. So that's our evening.
Definitely a valid strategy that gives you basically the perks of rope drop, only without having to get up at the crack of dawn. And some people just aren't morning people. We have a friend that she's like, I just don't like waking up. I will always pick park close over rope drop. And a lot of grown people without little kids feel that way. When we go on trips by ourselves, we tend to hang a lot longer than with our kids generally. So it just kind of depends on the dynamic of your family and what sounds like it will work best for you. But it's a whole vibe at night. You don't want to not go. I mean,
no. Take
a break. There's just nothing good about Disneyland between 2 and 5 p.m. Like, prove me wrong, because I don't enjoy it during that period. I would rather be sleeping or swimming or hanging out somewhere eating a snack.
The crowds are just so much. I think the only time I prefer is when it's like really cold dead of winter or something, and it's pleasant
warm
weather that time of the day.
But it's still crowded.
Like,
that's for me. And maybe, again, this is sort of a we go a lot thing, and so we don't have as much perspective on this. But like, there's only so much I'm willing to do.
People are getting tired. They're hungry. They're grumpy. Your patience is starting to get a little thin. And it's just a good time to go take a break. This is, again, why you stay on Harbor or somewhere nearby where you can feel like you can go back to your hotel. You can change your clothes that have been all gross and sweaty
for the night or whatever.
Leave everything at the hotel that you don't need. You can it's just a reset. Even if it's that my kids don't nap. My kids like almost never nap, no matter what I do. But we will go back to the hotel and get them a snack and sit on the hotel bed and watch some cartoons.
What they want to do
we'll kind of like take a little power nap. And they're totally happy to do that. Yeah. And we turn the lights down. We kind of just, it's like quiet time. Yeah. Like when they're toddlers.
Just do a little reset. My kids love going back and watching Disney Channel or whatever while we take a nap. Like that works for everyone. And everyone's happier, and everyone's fuses are less short, and you can change your clothes, like you said, and,
change your shoes.
We really often will just change our shoes just for everything's hitting in a different spot, even if they're not like causing a problem. It's nice to just change your footprint. And I don't know. I will always be an advocate for a midday break.
For sure.
So,
if at all possible.
Anyway, so that's our tips for this episode. If you stuck with us through all of this, it was kind of long, but there's a lot more we could say, and there's a lot more we want to say. And we have really kind of worked to create sort of an outline of what we want to cover over the next few months, really, where we can kind of help you think of this as sort of like a course in Disneyland, where it gets progressively more detailed and difficult.
Disney 101.
So this was like your first taste of just basics to help you kind of get your feet wet, and we will delve into things like how to get a dining reservation, how to run the app, how to take kids, how to, we have a lot of things still coming down the pipeline.
Genie plus Lightning Lane MultiPass.
Lightning Lane, a lump. We'll talk about lump in a further episode, so stay tuned.
Thanks for being here, you guys. We really appreciate it. Give us a like and a follow. Subscribe if you can. Share with the friends. It always helps us out. So we appreciate you being here.